Hi, everyone. It's Erin Taylor, the Dish Diva. So, welcome to my kitchen. So, can you believe the holidays are just around the corner? I mean, time is flying so much. So, I guess we better get a move on this holiday cooking, right? But before I begin, I want to let you guys know that I racked my brain on trying to figure out what to cook for you guys. And as the holidays approach, I know this can be a very special, stressful time. And then when you're trying to stay on track with your healthy eating, it becomes even more stressful, right? So, my focus tonight or today is going to be on tweaking some holiday meals, but it's also going to focus on ideas for those times before and after the holidays. And it is all focused on ingredients that are in season, which will be nicer on your budget and for this time of year, they're usually at a lower cost because of that or on sale. And let's be real. So, Thanksgiving only comes one time a year. So, it's okay to indulge a little bit, right? Especially if this is the only time of year that you get to eat Aunt Patty's sweet potato pie. And we don't want you to get banned from any of the future social gatherings because you decided to replace the macaroni with cauliflower in your family's mac and cheese recipe. Now I know some of those recipes are sacred, and especially for this time of year, and a lot of them are steeped in a lot of tradition. So I'm not going to mess with them too much. But the first thing I am making tonight is a cauliflower stuffing. Now I made this last year for my Thanksgiving dinner, and it turned out pretty well. This year I'm tweaking it a bit to include some bread, so you're not feeling quite so adventurous. A full cauliflower stuffing. This may be a little bit more appealing. All right, so let's get cooking. All right, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm turn on this oven, and we are going to set this here. And so, if you guys have the recipes, you're more than welcome to cook along with me, or you can refer back to this video later when you're ready to cook these recipes. All right. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to start with the cauliflower stuffing. I'm going to turn this burner on as well because we're going to be sauteing some of the vegetables. All right, guys. So, what we've got here is some onions and some celery. So we're going to be making those in the skillet. We'll be warming those up in the skillet. Now, one thing that I like to do is I like to add a little bit of spray oil. That way you're not using as much oil. Instead of, pouring it straight from the bottle, you kind of limit it a little bit more. So we're going to use the spray instead of the bottle. All right. The other things that are included in this recipe are going to be, of course, cauliflower. I did get a little bit of smoked turkey. So the smoked turkey, I got one of those drums from the grocery store. And this is going to add a little flavor to the dressing. Now, if you have a turkey already made and you want to add some of that turkey to it, that's perfectly fine. We can do that as well. All right. So what we're going to do is get this nice and warm, and then we're going to put in our onions and our celery, and we're going to saute that up. Now, some other components, like I said, I'm doing the bread. So I've got the little bread cubes, which are the grocery stores right now. So this shouldn't be hard to find at all. Thing I like about these is that they do actually have a mixture of whole wheat bread, white bread. I wish I could have found all whole wheat, but that's okay. Right? We're trying to just increase the nutrients of everything that we're making today, just a little bit, right? So the more vegetables we can get in there, the more whole grains we can get in there, the better. So that's what we're adding in the cauliflower. So the cauliflower is just going to add in a little bit more nutrients. It's going to maybe just give it a little bit more of a texture change. But all the flavor is going to be there because we're still using that rosemary, that thyme, that sage. All right, so we've got our pan nice and hot.
Aaron, can't hear you.
I think my mic turned itself off.
You're good now. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Hopefully that doesn't happen again, guys. Sorry. All right. I guess that's what happens when you do stuff live, huh? Okay. So we've got that in the oven. And what we're going to do next is we're going to work on doing what I am going to call a restorative meal for you guys. Okay.
Can we
So,
recap? Can you recap what you were doing? What you
yeah.
did? Yep, just a little for them.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, so I just put the cauliflower stuffing into the oven. So it is a combination of the smoked turkey. We've got some of those herbs that we use traditionally in a stuffing. So there's the thyme, there's the sage, and we use some parsley in there. Um, we also poured in a little bit of chicken broth and some eggs and egg whites and a little bit of salt and pepper, and then, of course, cauliflower. So the cauliflower was riced, and I just get that from the freezer section in the store. Sometimes saving time is worth spending a little extra money on some of the products, right? Rice and cauliflower can be a little tedious because you can only rice a little bit at a time depending on how big your blender or your food processor is. So, anyhow, the stuffing is in the oven. It's cooking right now. So I'm going to move on to a roasted sweet potato soup. So I chose this recipe because this is one of my go-tos when I just need a quick go-to snack. If I'm really busy, this kind of fills me up. And right now, when it's cold, I think right now outside it is probably about 34 degrees. So I want something warm and comfortable. And right now, sweet potatoes are everywhere. They're on sale, and they are seasonal produce. Okay, so I'm gonna put this dish down here so I can get it out of the way. And what we're gonna do is start with our sweet potatoes. Grab another bowl. Okay, so we're going to roast up these sweet potatoes in the oven. We'll just put them in the oven with the stuffing. So I peeled and cubed some sweet potatoes here. And just roughly chopped up an onion. I'm going to stick that in there. And roughly chopped up some yellow and red peppers. All right, I'm also going to add in a little bit of minced garlic. There we go. Perfect. And then the next step is just to get a little bit of oil on here so that it doesn't burn when you're roasting it. So again, the spray oil is my go-to. I could just use a little bit instead of drizzling a whole lot of oil on there. Now I'm going to toss this. There we go. We're going to toss this just so that the oil gets on there throughout, and it's well mixed through, as well as that garlic. You want that garlic to be on all the pieces of the food in here. We are going to sprinkle on just a little bit of salt and pepper. And mix that again.
Hey, Aaron, why don't you just take the mic off? Because we don't hear you one more time. You may have to change your setting on the StreamYard though.
There we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
It looked like it muted me. Okay. All right, guys. So as I was saying, we're getting, we have the sweet potatoes in here. We have some onion. We have some bell peppers. And then I put some, I sprayed some oil on there. Sprinkled some salt and pepper. When it was, have some minced garlic in here as well. So I'm stirring that up. And again, the oil just kind of protects the vegetables from drying out. And then I'm going to put it on a cookie sheet here or a baking sheet. And I have a silicone mat on here because I love these mats because it helps with cleaning. So if something burns, it burns to the silicone mat and not onto my actual baking sheet. And sometimes if there's no food that touches any of this pan, there's just little to no cleaning involved. So I'm going to put this on here. I love this because it's so nice and colorful. So anytime a recipe calls for garlic, you know, like this recipe probably calls for 2 cloves of garlic, I will use like 5. So 2 just means 5 to me. And if it calls for just a red pepper, I'll probably use a variety of colors just because I like to see that rainbow of colors. And just keep in mind that each color represents different nutrients. So the more colors you have, the more nutrients, the more variety of nutrients you're going to get. Okay, so we've got this laid out on the sheet here, nice and flat. All right, guys, just trying to organize this stuff so I don't have a pile of things everywhere. Okay, so we're going to take this cookie sheet and we're going to add it to the oven. All right, so we'll let that roast in there for just a second. Clean up my mess a little bit. Okay, all right, guys. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is a fall harvest fruit salad. So I know, you know, during this time of year, there's lots of sweets that we can indulge in. And I know during like Christmas, it seems like during the month of December, like there's nothing but food and everybody's gifting sweets and cookies and cupcakes and cakes and all of those things. So, you know, to kind of reset, the step back, if you want something sweet, the fruit is always a good go-to. Without it being an apple pie or a blueberry pie, we're going to have the actual fruit. Okay, so we're going to make a little fruit salad here. All right, so what I'm going to do is cut up a little bit of fruit for you guys. So, you know, the fall fruits are not as plentiful as the summer and spring fruits, obviously. Where during the summer and spring, you've got like all those berries that are in season and melons and the stone fruits, so the peaches and plums and cherries. So there's just this large array of fruits that are available. So the fruits that are usually available during the fall are pears, apples, oranges, and there's a lot of varieties of those oranges. And then also like pomegranates and cranberries. So we're going to make a salad kind of incorporating all of those fruits, okay? So we are going to add in some oranges here. So the orange is going to be a little sweet. We're going to use some of the juice from one of these oranges to make a dressing as well to go over it. So this can be a good go-to for you when you're having a craving for something sweet. It can also, what's nice about like these fruit salads like this is like once you put the dressing on them, they taste better like a couple days down the road because the dressing kind of helps pull out some more of the liquid from the fruits, which helps sweeten the salad naturally. Yeah. There we go. All right, so we've got the oranges. We're going to add some pear. I do have, if you do want to do apples, a great way to get an apple with less sugar is to use the Granny Smith apples. So you can use those as a variety. You can also do like a combination of pears and apples. So really just make it your own. Grapefruit would also work in this as well. Okay, so we've got our oranges. I'm going to cut up some pear here. All right, so if you guys are cooking with me at home, hopefully you're able to see how I'm cooking it, how I have chopped this pear. You can see it's kind of square. I just quarter it instead of trying to cut it open and then cut out the inside where the seeds are. If you quarter it, you can do the same with an apple. If you quarter it, then it just makes it a little bit easier. And so often I'll throw these cores to my dog. He hears me chopping in the kitchen, he comes running. Because he even gets the little bit of the leftover. He likes the stalks of the kale. So I give him that as well. All right, so we've got some pear going in here. So one corner, one side, and one side, and voila. Or I'll give this little piece to my son and he can nibble around the core. There we go. All right, so we've got that diced up. So you can make it the size that you want. You don't have to do like perfectly small dices. You can do bite size, you can do it bigger. It's just up to your personal preference. I always say that recipes are just guides. It's not something that you have to strictly stick to, and unless it's baking. I will say that baking is more of a science. So, if you take away a dry ingredient, you could mess up the whole entire thing. So when it comes to cooking, though, that's not the case. So I always like to leave a little leeway so I can like play with the different vegetables or fruits in a recipe, or the different seasonings or the combination of seasoning. So like I said, it's just a guideline. All right, so we've got that. What I have in here is some cranberries. So cranberries are, they are very, very, very bitter. Okay, so they always require a little bit of sweetener with it. So that's why when you make the cranberry sauce, you're usually putting in like some orange juice and some sugar and stuff like that, because they are bitter. So these, and they're pretty firm too. So if I were to take a bite of these, then you get that sour face, that. So we always want to add a little bit of sweetener to that. But when you're making it at home, you have control over how much that is. Okay, I'm throwing these into a food processor. Now, if you're a type of person that does not like to chop up vegetables and things like that, this will be your best friend. Okay, it has different blades where it can actually do shredding of things. Like I've done a Brussels sprout salad, and I could shred the Brussels sprout in here, which is amazing, because if you have to cut each one of those little Brussels sprouts, it gets a little frustrating. These do come in varying sizes, so you can get a little small one and helps you chop up onions, so you don't have to cry every time you chop them up. You can it's great making salsa and things like that, or you can get a bigger one if you want to do bigger jobs. Okay, so I'm just pulsing that up a little bit there so that we can put this into the salad, because like I said, they're very firm. And if we don't chop them up, then that sweetness isn't going to kind of get in there throughout the whole dish. So we're going to add that in there. Of course, this makes it feel like the holidays, right? Got that cranberry in there. And this is just one bag. I think a 12-ounce bag of cranberries that I put in here. There we go. All right. Yay, looks so pretty. Now, I'm one of those people that loves cranberries, like loves cranberries. I like that tartness to them. So this is very appealing to me, this salad. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys next how to cut this pomegranate. So I know a lot of people that avoid pomegranates because they don't like fighting with them. They feel like it's a constant battle to get the pomegranate open. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that in a good way. Now, if you ever need to figure out how to chop something, just go to YouTube. There's usually a video about it. So we're going to slice across the top of this, kind of like it's a cap, okay? So we're going to just kind of do an easy slice across the top. Pomegranates are such good fruits too, because they've got a lot of antioxidants in them.
We've got a question, Aaron. Are the cranberries raw or boiled?
The cranberries are raw. So that's why I had to chop them up a little bit, because we didn't cook them at all. You know, when you're usually boiling them in the pot, that's what makes them softer. These are and this is a fruit salad that's gonna allow for like a nice crunch, because you got the apple or pear in there as well. You're also going to be eating on the seeds that kind of have the pomegranate seeds that have that seed in there that you can eat, but it's going to give you that crunch as well. Good question. All right, so we've got the pomegranate here. We've got the lid off. If you take a look in there, you can see these lines that, let's get a little closer here. You can see these lines, and it kind of gives you guidelines on where that membrane is that separates all the seeds. So if you can cut through that, you actually can get to the seeds a lot easier. So I'm going to slice down each of these lines here. So we're basically just opening up the sections. So I don't know how many of you guys fight through pomegranates or even eat them. If you don't want to deal with cutting them, you can buy them, but already, you know, peeled. It's going to cost you a lot more though. So just keep that in mind. We're always paying a little bit more for convenience, right? All right. So you can see here, I've got it open, kind of have all the sections opened up here. And then what we can do is we'll take a little bit at a time. And one method is to actually just sort of beat the pomegranate on the back. And you can see the seeds kind of falling out of there. Of course, this one doesn't want to cooperate as much with me. Let's get some more of that membrane off of there. There we go. And you can see, you can just kind of pull it out and just break them apart and drop them in there. So like I said, pomegranates are so good. And I remember eating these as a kid a lot. I don't remember. I think when I was living in California, but I do remember, I don't remember fighting through them. I don't know if we actually fought through them and just ate them piece by piece. I don't remember throwing them into a bowl like this or anything that technical. But I do remember eating these a lot. But what I used to do, I never knew that you could eat the seeds when I was younger. I used to just put a handful of these in my mouth and just kind of bite down and suck all the juice out of it. Anybody else do that? I used to, and then I would spit all the seeds out. And apparently you can eat the seeds too, so that's good. You're not wasting anything there. All right, so we've got our pomegranates here. There you go. And then if any of the little bit of membrane falls in there, you could, if you see it in there, like big pieces like that, you can pull that out because that's going to be a little bit more bitter. And we don't need any more bitter in here because we've got those cranberry seeds in there, right? So really looking at using cranberries beyond the cranberry sauce, because I don't know if anybody else uses them in a way that goes beyond the cranberry sauce. If you do, let me know. You can put it in the chat there. But I like putting cranberries, like during this time of year, I'll buy a bunch of the cranberries when they're on sale and freeze them. And then I like putting them in my smoothies. And, you know, because it's one of those fruits that you can't really find unless you buy them frozen. You can't really find them in the grocery store because they're out of season. So I like to freeze them up and put them, and I just like that bitterness in my smoothies, and I can enjoy the cranberries all year round. All right, so you can see it's a very pretty salad. That red in there really just kind of makes it pop. And then what we're gonna do is, like I said, we're gonna put a little bit of a dressing over top of this. So I juiced one of the oranges. So that's gonna work as our base. Okay. I am obsessed with ginger. And so I added a little bit of mint. I'm gonna add a little bit of minced ginger to this. The nice thing about ginger though, especially like when we're going to these gatherings and we're kind of overeating, the ginger really does help aid digestion. So when you're thinking about the day after Thanksgiving, like having something with some of that ginger in there is really going to help with your tummy. Okay. So we are going to, I did some orange zest as well that we can put in here, but I'm just going to put it into the dressing so they can get evenly coated on there. So I've got some orange zest, some minced ginger going in there. And then we're going to put some honey. So like I said, the cranberries are going to be very bitter. So if you eat it just like this, it might not be as appealing. So we're going to add just some honey. And I do like doing like a little bit of raw honey because the raw honey will has some more nutrients, because if they warm the honey up, it actually kills some of the nutrients in there. And honey is used as like an antibacterial. Honey never goes bad. I think they've even found jars of honey in the Egyptian pyramids. That was still good. All right, so you're just shaking that up. And once you put some of the, a sugary substance on top of fruit, it usually helps to draw out more of the juices from the fruit. It'll also soften the pears there, because those pears I use are very crisp. It'll help soften them up a little bit. So we're going to pour that over here. We're going to get all of that goodness from the orange zest, and got the orange zest in there. We've got the ginger in there as well. So nice and flavorful. And I think I threw out my spoon. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this sit for a little bit. All right. So like I said, with these kind of fruit salads with a dressing like that, the marinade is actually going to help just kind of infuse some of that flavor into the fruit. All right. And I will show you this in just a second. Actually, we are going to move this out of the way because it might be time to pull out the sweet potatoes. All right, let's move this out of the way. So my kitchen is small, but it is mighty. It's done a lot of work over the years, me cooking in here all the time. All right, so I'm just kind of trying to put my stuff aside because this stuff does pile up, right? I'll pull out some of my garnishes that we're going to use when I put together some of the stuff when it's done. One thing I did want to mention too, so some of the seasoning that I'm using with some of the stuff that you'll see a little bit later is Mrs. Dash. And this is a really popular one because it does not have salt. So when we're cooking at home, one of the benefits of doing that is we can make our food a lot less salty and a lot fewer calories, right? Okay. Let's see what our food is doing in here. Okay, so it looks like the stuffing's coming along nicely. Those potatoes still need to get a little softer in there. So if you guys have any questions right now about anything we've talked about so far, you can go ahead and pose those questions. We can answer those while we have this stuff finished cooking here. So, and one of the things with when I'm doing Thanksgiving meals is I'm always, like I told you guys, I'm always looking to add some nutrients in there. But I'm also wanting to try using less, right? So if you have a traditional recipe that calls for like a whole stick of butter, try use half a stick of butter. So there's little things that you can do to just really still make the foods the way you usually make them without making them quite as high in calories and fats and sodium, right? And of course, you know, some of the things that we'll do now is like a smoked turkey leg or a wing that will you can put into the greens as opposed to doing a ham hock. So we're going to get a lot less sodium that way, a lot less fat calories as well. And then something that you guys want to always think about too, like when you're going to your family gatherings, try to think about like what you're going to eat before you go there. So you don't want to go to the gathering that may start at like 3 or 4 o'clock and be starving. So that's when you will kind of get off track and you may overindulge. So it's important to have a plan, right? You always want to have a plan before and after. And so like the soup that I'm making is one of those things that would be great to enjoy after the fact, right?
Hey,
Right.
Erin, we've got another question. Tell me about your cookware. What kind is it?
So I have, it's called Masterclass. So it's got like a ceramic coating over top of it. I do like the ceramic coatings because they tend to be nonstick without having like some of the toxic things and that they're talking about these days in our pots and pans. I actually got these at TJ Maxx and Marshalls, one of the two. Those are my favorite stores. And we kind of bought like a few basics. And then every time we went, we would look to see if there was a different size or shape or something. So now we probably have about, I don't know, 10 pieces. So we have like a really big stock pot, a really big skillet. I recently just got a big wok, but I really like it. It's very lightweight too, so it's not super heavy. Some of the other ceramic ones I have are like the cast iron with the ceramic on it, which those are great too, but they're so heavy. These are nice and lightweight, so I prefer those. Yeah. All right. So, and one thing, I don't know if you guys noticed this back here. Now, I'm all about self-care, right? And so every now and then, a little wine is necessary. Okay. This wine is actually called Fit Vine, and it's lower in sugar than a lot of other wines that are out in the market. So it's a really good find, and it's lower because they actually strain it a little bit more or filter it a little bit more, so they're able to get more of the tannins out of it, more of the sugars out of it, and it's fairly decent, right? So a little wine, like if you need something to just kind of relax with, is if this is part of your self-care routine, do half a glass. All right, especially if you're doing the cooking and you need to have a little bit of something to kind of keep you going. One of the other things I like to do is have some music playing in the background, and I have my own little dance party in the kitchen. Nobody else is in there, nobody else is allowed, and I'm partying. One other thing that you could do with this wine, though, so if you have your glass of wine, you can make yourself a little sparkler. This will help you not drink as much of the wine because, of course, we want to watch our liquid calories. And then this just kind of makes it a little fancier. Okay, so this is just a sparkling water. There's so many out on the market now. You can get flavored, unflavored, whatever the case may be. And you can add it to your wine. And now you've got this nice little fizzy drink.
Hey, we're getting another question. Where can you purchase the wine?
I got it at Kroger. I'm in Columbus, Ohio. So that's the grocery store that is here. I think I've gotten it at Whole Foods. I don't know if Trader Joe's sells it or not, but yeah, I think if you just check your regular grocery store, or if you don't have like a grocery store that sells it, just go to a wine store, beer and wine store. They probably have it there.
Erin, I know that we had the recipes sent out to certain people, but how can they get a copy of the recipes?
Yeah, we can make sure that we have, we'll send them out to all the coaches. Make sure that you guys have access to them.
And if they're not a coach, just
Yeah, we can just
email. Yeah.
we can send them through the email.
Okay.
Yeah, we can email them out to everybody.
All righty.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, this is actually pretty tasty. Like it's got a nice little fizz to it. You can make it almost into like a sangria. You can add some fruit in there.
And one last time, what was the name brand on that wine?
It's called Fit Vine. Here, let me show you. There you go.
Not to be making it all about wine.
I know. That's okay. You guys see that? Fit
Yes.
Vine.
Yes.
So this is a Cabernet Sauvignon, but they do have a variety. So if you like white wine, they do have that as well. But you know, it really is a good find when you're trying to lower your sugar in the foods and drinks that you're taking on. Like it's a really good find. But I'm telling you, add a little sparkling water to it. This is fantastic. You know. So and then you're drinking a lot less wine. You're getting a lot more water, a little bit more hydration. But yeah, that's something. And you guys, if you check it out, let me know what you think because I know some people love it and some people don't like it. So it depends on, you know, if you're a big wine connoisseur, you may not like it as much, but I like it. It works for me. All right. So I'm going to come back over here to this fruit. Make sure this isn't on. I'm going to show you guys a little what this will look like here. We're going to stir it up and to get those juices flowing. And this will keep in your refrigerator for, you know, up to like 5 days or so. So this can be like a really good go-to snack for you if you like are having a sweet craving. But remember that it's going to be a little tiny bit bitter. But again, you're in control on how much sweetness you add to it. And the honey is really nice with that.
What's the portion size?
For this, I believe it's about, I would say like a half a cup. So you can just do a little cup of this as a snack or as like kind of a side salad. Now, what I would do with this is add a little bit of mint. So for me, I'm always trying to find a way to add greens into my food. And so herbs are a great way to do that. Okay, so fresh mint is also really good on fruit. So with this, chopped up a little bit of fresh mint, top that there. And then if you want a little bit of healthy fat to go with it too, you can do like some chopped pecans. Pumpkin seeds would work as well. You know, I was telling somebody the other day, I was like, you know, pumpkin everything is not my thing. I'm more on the sweet potato everything, right? But I'll do some pumpkin seeds in a heartbeat. So that's where I can get put in the pumpkin. But there, you've got a nice, beautiful salad. Now, this is even something you could take to a Thanksgiving gathering. Like if you want to make sure that you have something healthy that's there that you can kind of fill up on, and so that you're not feeling guilty about eating, you know, some of the other foods, or you just need something to fill your stomach so that you don't go to the other food. This is a great snack to have. I always encourage people to take something healthy to these gatherings. You might not be the only one that appreciates it. You never know. Like somebody might be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought a salad. So, all right. So that is our fruit.
Erin, they're also asking, did you create all the recipes?
You know, what I do is I find recipes and then I tweak them. I do sometimes make some recipes, but these I've just sort of tweaked. Like I'll find some recipes that I'll make a few times and I really like, but I always change them. Like I said, recipes are always like a guide for me. And so it's a way for me to just kind of have a base of like, oh yeah, this will work together. But let me see if I add this into it and maybe do this spice or take this thing out. So they kind of are a far cry from some of the other recipes that might be out there. All right. Move this out of the way. I'm glad we were able to talk about wine. I'm glad you guys were able to find something that would work. All right, so we've got this a little bit softer. Yep, those are getting softer. And our stuffing is just about done. I'm going to take out our sweet potatoes here. Okay, so we've got our pan of sweet potatoes, got our peppers and our onions. All right, so what I'm gonna do next is we're gonna take about 3/4 of this and we're gonna put it into the pan. So I've got this stock pot already warming. Gonna put a little bit of spray oil in there. And we're going to drop some of this in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of cook this down just a little bit more. And we're also going to get some of the herbs in here as well before we turn this into our stew.
And remind us what the ingredients are again.
Yeah, so the ingredients that are in here, we've got the sweet potatoes, we've got the peppers, we've got the garlic, and we've got some onion. So what we're going to do is just let this kind of cook down, and we're going to add in. So we've got some dried thyme, some smoked paprika, and then, of course, some ginger. Some ground ginger in there. The smoked paprika is really nice because it gives you that like smoky and sweet mouthful when you're eating this. So we'll let that kind of go for a little bit. And I'll show you guys in just a second what I'm going to do with the rest of the sweet potatoes. Because again, I'm always thinking about planning, like planning for something else, for another meal. All right. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit of broth to this. That I missed. So your sweet potatoes don't have to be like perfectly soft or really soft because you're going to end up pureeing this anyway. So just as long as they're a little bit tender, they'll blend pretty well. All right, so we're going to add in our broth now that we've kind of put some of the seasoning and flavor in there. Now for me, you know, a pureed soup is good. But I still like to have a little bit of like texture in my soups. So a lot of times what I'll do is either add less broth to like a soup or stew. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually not puree it quite as much so that there's still some like chunks and a little bit of a bite in there. And when you're looking for getting like the smoky flavor into food, smoked paprika works really well. We also have, like you can find like a smoked sea salt, smoked garlic, smoked pepper. Now, some of those you may have to go to like a specialty spice store like Pins if you guys have one in your area. But I tend to find a lot of those kind of things at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. You can tell I shop there a lot.
And what type of broth was that?
What's that?
What type of broth was that?
It's a chicken broth. Yeah, so I just put a chicken broth in there. I think I get this from, I just get like the case from Costco. It's the Kirkland brand because we eat a lot of soups during the wintertime. So once it gets cold, like I just don't want a salad at all. I just want something warm, something that's going to warm me up. So we do a lot of soup. So it just makes more sense for me to buy it in bulk as opposed to just kind of buying it every time I make a meal every week. Okay, so this is in here, and I have an immersion blender. So these are kind of cool. I mean, again, I cook a lot, so I have a lot of gadgets. It's not necessary to have one of these. You can always put the you can pour this, the contents of the soup into a blender, and you can puree that up really finely, or keep it a little chunky if you want. Or you could puree half of the soup and then pour it back into the other stuff that's still whole. And so you've got kind of a combination there. The immersion blender is nice because then I don't have to remove it from the pot at all. And it tends to not puree it quite as finely. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that in there. You can still see some of the chunks that are in the soup. You can see like pieces of onion. So that's kind of how I like it. Now, if you want to puree it, if you like it a little bit thicker, you can use less broth in there. If you want it, you can puree it down. Like just so many options. I like to have a little bit of a chew to it when I eat this. All right, so we're going to let this simmer just a little bit longer, just so that all the flavors can kind of get melded in there again. And we're just about at the time where we need to take the stuffing out. Ooh, it's looking good. So about 8 more minutes on that. In the meantime, let me show you guys what my plans are for this, the rest of this here. So like I said, always looking at planning for the next meal. So I am, as I'm making this soup, I'm thinking, oh, you know, it'd be nice to just have some sweet potatoes to eat. Well, you have some now. So what you can do is when you're making food, especially around the holiday, think about making like a big pot of this soup, and then you can freeze half of it, right? Or you can, like I did the roasting of the vegetables, you make more of these vegetables, and that way you have them to use for other uses. Again, freezing those meals is going to be so important because you can always have something to go to. Okay. But what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to show you guys here. Got a couple of items here we're going to add into a bowl. And then those of you that do have recipes, you do have a recipe for a cranberry vinaigrette. So again, trying to use those foods that are in season. And I love good vinaigrette, and you know, you get a little bit of tartness from the cranberries in this as well. But we're going to build us a bowl. So the bowls are so popular right now, right? You can call them Buddha bowls. Sometimes I like to refer to them as just warm salads because, you know, you have the greens in there as well. Or you can, you know, use like a different type of leafy green. You can add it to like some lettuce greens, all of these components here. So what I have is I sauteed down some kale. And this is the Tuscan kale or the Dino kale. So it's not, the leaves aren't quite as crinkly. They're a little bit more flat. So, of course, I like to have a lot of that. A lot of greens. And then what I have going on back here is rice in my rice cooker. So we've got our green. We've got our grain. And again, always thinking about the future. We've got, if you make a big batch of the rice, you can use it for other things. And of course, these bowls, like I said, are so popular right now. So we're going to put some of the sweet potatoes on top of there. and the peppers and the onions. And, you know, when you're doing this, when you're roasting this, if there are some other vegetables that you wanted to roast with them, like the mushrooms would have been good to roast on there, you can do that as well. So now we've got this bowl. We've got this beautiful, colorful bowl. I also have some mushrooms that I sauteed with a little bit of that Mrs. Dash. I'm going to put that on top. Can of chickpeas. You know, a lot of us have beans in the cabinet in the pantry. So any kind of beans would work. Gives you a little bit of protein in there. And saying that too, you can use another grain. If you want to use quinoa, you could do that as well. And then what I'm going to do is pour a little bit of this vinaigrette on top of there. Okay. And the vinaigrette is basically olive oil, some cranberries. There's a shallot in there. There's some thyme. And you just blend it all together. And it's this really nice, thick, kind of creamy dressing. Okay. All right. So check that out, guys. Nice and beautiful. Lots of different colors in there. Just looks great for the season. And then I'm going to actually top it with some pumpkin seeds. There's my pumpkin, but I still have my sweet potatoes. So this might be my meal, my next meal. So thanks, guys. So you can see now we've got a little bit of the fruit salad. We've got a little Buddha bowl or rice bowl, however you want to call it.
Did you make the dressing?
I did. It was just, like I said, cranberries. It was olive oil, some fresh thyme, and some red wine vinegar I put in there, and shallot. You just blend that all up in the blender, and voila. So again, with those cranberries, I'm trying to look beyond just the cranberry sauce, right? Because those cranberries really are, like I said, high in antioxidants. They're great for urinary health. You guys always hear about drinking cranberry juice to help with urinary tract infection. So they have some really great properties to them, but, you know, they're only around during this time of year. So I like to just try to find different ways to use it. So I'm not just eating cranberry sauce all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I love cranberry sauce. I love a good cranberry sauce. And I would recommend, you know, if you're doing it, maybe do some honey or some maple syrup instead of doing like a whole lot of sugar in there, and maybe put in like squeeze some fresh orange juice in there as well. And then that you get that sweetness with the sauce without having a whole lot of extra calories in there. All right. Okay. So this guy is just about done. We're going to turn the burner off here, and I'm going to show you guys how I put this together. Got a bowl right here. All right, I'm going to spoon a little bit in here. And, you know, sometimes my husband is kind of hard to please when it comes to me doing like these healthy recipes. He tried this and was like, oh, that's pretty good. And he doesn't usually like the pureed soups. I like them because, like I said, they tend to be more snacks for me. Like I can just do a little bowl here and I'm satisfied for a couple of hours, especially if it's like in between, that time in between lunch and dinner, where you're like struggling to figure out what you're going to eat. And, you know, the timing is just much longer than it is between breakfast and lunch. All right. So I've got this in here. Oh, and one thing that I forgot to mention. Always, 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 always taste your food, you know. Make sure you taste it. And then you can adjust the seasoning accordingly. Okay, so if it needs a little bit more flavor, we can put a little bit more thyme in there, put a little bit with some more smokiness. We can put some smoked paprika in there. Something that would work well with this dish too would be like cumin, or even like chili powder. Because that kind of sweet, like I said, the sweet and spicy and sweet and savory combination is really nice. All right, so we have this here. So when you're looking at, like, we have a lot of vegetables in here. We can add some healthy fat in the form of goat cheese. This is goat cheese or feta. I'm a huge fan of goat cheese. I'm a fan of a lot of food, right? So this is a little bit of goat cheese. You can just sprinkle a little bit of the crumbles on top. And goat cheese has that kind of really tanginess to it, which I love. So it kind of, again, pairs well with the sweetness of the sweet potatoes. And then I'm going to sprinkle on a little bit of parsley. There we go. And so you guys can see in here, it's just this beautiful bowl of sweet potato soup. All right. So I know you guys asked me if I, made the recipe. So I found this recipe years ago, and it was like a butternut squash soup. And it had like bacon in it. So I tweaked it, still made a little bit of that smokiness. Used sweet potatoes because I always seem to have sweet potatoes in the house. And it came out really well.
So we do have another little question here. What's the ratio of fresh herbs to dried herbs?
Yeah, so if you're doing, that's a good question. So if a recipe calls for, say, a tablespoon of an herb, of a fresh herb, you can probably get away with just using 1 to 2 teaspoons of the dried herb. So the dried herb, the flavor is going to be more concentrated in the dried herbs. So you don't have, if you use a tablespoon, it might go overboard. But so what you can do is start off with like 1 teaspoon. And then if you need a little bit more, you can add a little bit more. But that's why I say tasting is always important, because you always want to know where the flavor is at. You never want to go too far with the seasonings because you can't take it back.
And they also said because they usually buy the herbs and they go bad before they use them.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah, and that's why I always try to find ways to use them. I'll sprinkle the herbs on salads. I'll garnish anything with the herbs I have in there. I'm actually working on some recipes that come up with like some like herb snacks. But herbs work really well in dressings. So if you eat a lot of salads, or you do like a lot of those bowls, what you can do is make your dressing. If you have herbs that are about to go bad, go ahead and throw them into a blender with like some olive oil. You can use like some Dijon mustard. If you do like a vinegar, you kind of get a vinaigrette. But blending those together, you can do like Greek yogurt to make more of a creamy dressing. But that's a great way to use those. And like some of that vinegar in there in the dressing itself will help kind of keep the herbs fresher longer. But yeah, I mean, that is a good point. And so dry though, you'd want to make sure that you don't have the dried herbs sitting in your pantry for like 2 years. Generally like a year is probably a good expiration date for them, because they will start to kind of lose their flavors, and they have some natural oils in them that kind of degrade over time. All right, we've got our.
Remember to recap us on the stuffing because we got lost a little.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we got our stuffing. So the stuffing has cauliflower in it. There's some bread in there, but the base is cauliflower. We sauteed some onions, some celery and then we put in some garlic, and then we put in some thyme and sage and parsley and some smoked turkey and a little bit of egg whites in there to kind of help bind everything together, and some breadcrumbs. And then I sprinkled a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top to kind of give it a little pop of flavor as well. So what we're going to do, we'll go ahead and dress that. Let me get this out of the way so you guys can see all the finished products here. Okay, so we've got our dressing here. You technically want to let it sit for about 10 minutes or so, just so everything, all those juices that are kind of still alive and hot, kind of settle a little bit. But I will show you guys how we dress this. So I've got this here, and this is not very complicated at all. One of the other recipes that you guys will have is a mushroom gravy. So that is the other thing that I already made that because it takes a little bit long, because you have to, it's a very easy recipe, but it takes a little bit longer because you have to kind of let the, all the water come out of the mushroom. So that can take like up to 15 minutes just standing there sauteing. So I made that ahead of time. But what we have here is our stuffing. Okay. And you can see it's still pretty firm. It'll firm up a little bit more once it cools off. We're going to put that there. Smells wonderful. You can smell that smokiness from the turkey. And again, it's not going to be quite the same. I think sometimes when we think about changing some recipes, we have to kind of mentally prepare for it to not taste exactly the same as the original, right? So it's like some of those like impossible meats and stuff. If you're eating that, that's not going to quite taste the same as it would if you were just eating a real burger. So this is going to have a lot of those same flavor profiles. The texture just might be a little bit different. So I say that again, just to mentally prepare you. All right, so I've got my mushroom gravy over here. So this mushroom gravy is really nice because it is, it doesn't have any, it doesn't contain any like flour or anything like that. And was made with like cornstarch to help thicken it up a little bit. So you're not making like a true roux for this. But the mushrooms are in there. You have a little bit of the thyme and sage in there to give you that flavor of like a turkey gravy. And then like lots of onions in there as well. So what you can do, and this was really hot just a minute ago, so it's a little bit runnier than it normally would be, but once it cools down just a little bit, it'll come back to the consistency. Oops, let me move this over here so you guys can see this. But those mushrooms are really, really good for, they have some anti-inflammatory properties. You can get a lot of vitamin D from mushrooms, some certain mushrooms. It's good for immune health. So I'm going to pour some of this gravy over top of that. Voila. And so now you have your stuffing and you have your mushroom gravy. So even if those are just one or two of those things that you bring to the party, you're already doing a lot better than you would have been otherwise, right? If you guys do try any of these recipes, I do recommend you try them before you take them to a gathering, just to make sure that it comes out okay, you have the right flavoring profile, and just make sure that some other family members like it. Otherwise, like I said, I don't want to be responsible for getting you banned from the future holiday gatherings. Okay. That's not going to be my fault. I'm just here to help you guys. So when you're at home and you want to eat this on yourself, but by yourself, then that's great. If you take it to the family gatherings, don't tell them I sent you. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that is everything. So we've got our sweet potato soup. Oh, I do have one more thing I want to show you. So one thing that I mentioned was making a lot of food and saving it for later. And one really easy way to do that, especially if you're making like a soup and say you're the only one that's eating it, none of the people in your household want to eat it. It might be too much for you. It might go bad before you're ready to eat it all. This little guy here is called a super cubes. So basically you put the soup in here. You would pour your soup in here once it's cool. This is about a 1 cup measurement here. You pour the soup individually in those individual compartments, put the lid on, and you throw this in your freezer. Now what you can do is when you're ready to eat the soup, you can go in, grab this out, and pop out one of the cubes. Or what you can do once it's frozen, you can pop out the cubes, put them in a Ziploc, which is what I usually do. And you have the individual cubes in the Ziploc. Take that Ziploc, throw it into a pot, warm it up, or in the microwave, and now you've got a meal. You've got a cup of soup ready for you. So just really, when it comes down to it, I just want to make sure you guys are planning. So during these holidays, it can be stressful. It's, whether you're doing the cooking or somebody else is doing the cooking, it can be stressful to stay on track. But you know what? You guys can do it. You have the power to do it. I believe in you. And doing little things, making little tweaks, little changes will help you in the long haul. Okay. All right, guys. I hope this helped you a little bit for the holidays. And if you have any other questions, I'd love to answer them right now.
Hey, Erin.
Uh-huh.
We have one more question. Does your husband like the mushroom gravy?
Yes, actually, yeah, he really does. I made it one time when I went to his family's house for Thanksgiving, and his nieces loved it too. They were at the time probably like 12, 13 years old. and maybe even younger, but they loved it. So I had to give the recipe to his sister so she could make it. Like it's really good. It's a really good gravy.
And then last question, just about the portion sizes on those.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think with the portion size for the gravy, it's probably about a quarter cup. And the portion size for the dressing will probably be about 3/4 of a cup.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you guys for listening to me tonight and joining me in my kitchen. I enjoyed having you here, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Until next time, I'll see you later.